Bobby Allison drove for Smokey Yunick. He knew the man personally. He knew the shop, the cars, the methods. When asked about all the Smokey Yunick cheating stories, Bobby Allison said this, quote, 99.7% of it is myth. That number should stop you cold, because if you have watched any other video about Smokey Yunick, any listicle, any YouTube deep dive, any automotive history piece, they all repeat the same stories as if they are documented fact. The basketball in the fuel tank, driving away without a gas tank, the 7/8 scale Chevelle, the mercury ballast. We already made the verified video. 12 cheats, every one documented. Everyone confirmed by a NASCAR rule change. If NASCAR rewrote the rule book, it happened. That was the standard. This is the other video, the one where we go through the most famous Smokey Yunick stories, the ones that have been repeated on every platform for 50 years, and we tell you the truth about which ones actually happened. Some of these are going to surprise you, not because they are more dramatic than you thought, because they are less. When? The legend of Smokey Yunick was built on a foundation of things that actually happened. The Anaconda fuel line, the aluminum bumpers, the capsule car, the air jacks, those are documented and done. But somewhere along the way, the legend grew faster than the record. Stories got folded together, details got added, and the version that survived is not always the version that occurred. Start with the one everyone knows, the basketball in the fuel tank. The story goes like this. Smokey built a fuel tank larger than the rules allowed. Before inspection, he inflated a basketball inside the tank. The inspectors filled it with fuel, measured the volume, and it passed. Then Smokey deflated the ball, removed it, filled the now larger tank, and had more fuel than everyone else. Every Smokey Yunick video tells this story as settled fact. Jalopnik, Car Throttle, Essentially Sports, all of them, all citing each other. Here's what Buzz McKim said. McKim is a NASCAR historian, one of the people who spent years going through the actual period records. His comment on the basketball story, it might very well have been dissolved by the gasoline. Think about what that means. A basketball is rubber. Gasoline dissolves rubber. An inflated basketball sitting in a fuel tank would not survive contact with the fuel. It would degrade, it would lose pressure, it would not work the way the story describes. The physics of the trick are the problem, not the creativity of the idea. The idea is brilliant. The execution, as described, does not work with the materials involved. Marvin Panch drove for Smokey. When asked about nitrous oxide, hidden fuel tricks, the basketball, Panch said, "When I drove for him, I did not have anything like that." That is not a denial of everything. That is a man who was in the car saying he did not experience it. Now add Bobby Allison, also drove for Smokey, also knew the operation. 99.7% myth. The basketball story probably has a kernel of truth buried inside it. Smokey absolutely built oversized tanks. The Anaconda fuel line is documented. The fuel system creativity was real. What probably happened is that the real fuel tricks got retold, combined, dramatized, and the basketball was added as a vivid detail that made the story better in the telling. That is how legends work. A real trick becomes a better trick in the second telling, and by the 15th telling, you have a basketball. Number 2, driving away without a fuel tank. This is the most dramatic Smokey story. The way it gets told, NASCAR officials found violations on his car. They demanded fixes. They removed the fuel tank for inspection. Smokey looked at the list, said, "Better make it 10, started the car, and drove it back to his garage on nothing but that 11-foot fuel line. No tank, just the giant Anaconda line.
Here is Smokey's actual version. According to accounts sourced directly from Yunick himself, he did drive the Chevelle back through Daytona, but not on fuel line vapor. He scrounged some fuel, got the car running, and drove it home. When someone later told him they remembered seeing him at a stoplight on the way back, Smokey said, "Must have been the only one I stopped at." That is the real story. Not a defiant departure on an empty tank. A man who was furious, grabbed what fuel he could find, and drove home through a city while refusing to stop at lights. The confrontational dramatic scene, the specific quote about making it 10, the idea that the car ran without any tank or fuel system at all, that version is not confirmed by the man who lived it. What is confirmed is that his relationship with NASCAR officials was exactly as adversarial as the legend suggests. The specific scene got dramatized somewhere in the retelling. The Haggerty retrospective on Yunick notes that in one telling it is a Pontiac, in another a Chevelle. In one version there are 9 violations, in another 16. A story that exists in that many forms is not a story with one definitive accurate version. Number 3. The 7/8 scale Chevelle. This one is the most interesting because it exists in a specific middle space between myth and reality. The story, Smokey built a Chevelle that was 7/8 the size of a standard Chevelle, smaller in every dimension, passed inspection because NASCAR's rules described proportional compliance but did not mandate absolute dimensions. He effectively shrank the car. Smokey himself addressed this in Circle Track magazine in 1987. His explanation, the legend started when NASCAR officials used a wrecked and rebuilt Bobby John's Chevelle as a template for inspection. That car had been in a crash and was rebuilt. The rebuilt dimensions were not perfectly stock. When other cars were measured against that template, discrepancies appeared. That became the story of a deliberately scaled-down car. What the physical evidence shows is different from the legend. The surviving Yunick Chevelles from that era are full size. What Smokey did was subtle. Lowered roofline, raised floor pan, modified bumpers, reshaped body panels through careful metalwork. The car appeared lower and tighter than stock, but it was not literally scaled down. The 7/8 legend is a mythic upgrade on something that was genuinely remarkable. The actual body modifications were clever enough to force NASCAR to introduce body templates for the first time. That is documented. That is in the verified video. The dramatic 7/8 number is the legend's way of explaining something real that it did not fully understand. Number 4. The mercury ballast. This one sounds so elegant it almost has to be real. Liquid mercury in tubes running through the chassis, shifts forward on braking, shifts rearward on acceleration, constant optimal weight distribution at all times. Smart enough to be a Smokey idea. The problem, no primary source anywhere. No period technical report, no NASCAR bulletin, no inspection record, no sanctioned part. No NASCAR bulletin, nothing from Smokey's autobiography, his magazine interviews, or his 9 United States patents. The mercury ballast story appears in the same universe as the basketball. Racers and journalists who were in the paddock during that era say it is the kind of thing someone might have tried. Nobody says they saw it. Bobby Allison drives for Smokey and calls 99.7% of the stories myth. The mercury ballast almost certainly lives in that 99.7%. Number 5. Smokey invented EGR. This one circulates in automotive circles as a suppressed technology claim. Smokey had patents. Smokey was ahead of his time. The EGR system, exhaust gas recirculation, appears in modern emissions equipment, and the claim is that Smokey got there first and the industry buried it.
Chronologically, this does not hold. Production EGR systems appeared in American cars in the early 1970s, tied directly to EPA emissions regulations. Smokey's patents cover hot vapor fuel vaporization technology and the adiabatic engine concept, not original EGR development. The hot vapor engine is real, documented, and remarkable on its own terms. It does not need to be EGR to be significant. Crediting Smokey with inventing EGR is the same error as the 7/8 Chevelle. Something real and impressive gets upgraded into something larger in the retelling. Here is the thing about Smokey Yunick and his legend. The man who needed myths added to his story is a strange idea because the verified record is extraordinary without them. He called his shop the best damn garage in town. And nobody argued. He built the car that won Daytona in 1961 and 1962. He invented air jacks. He designed a deformable safety barrier decades before NASCAR adopted it. He held 9 United States patents. He flew 52 combat missions across Africa, Europe, and the Pacific. And NASCAR is still not inducted into the Hall of Fame. Bobby Allison said 99.7% of the stories are myth. Smokey himself said in a Hot Rod magazine interview that 90% of the so-called cheating was not cheating. He was pushing what the rulebook did not say rather than violating what it did. The distinction matters. Every verified cheat in the first video was something the rulebook forgot to prohibit. Smokey found the gap, drove through it, and NASCAR closed the door behind him. That is not cheating. That is engineering. The myths are the version of Smokey that needed him to be a cheater to be interesting. The real version did not need that. The real version was more interesting without it. But here's the question that nobody has been able to answer. If the man who actually drove for Smokey says 99.7% is myth, what is the other 0.3%? The 12 verified cheats, that accounts for some of it. But Smokey was at Daytona every year for over 2 decades. He built cars in a locked shop that nobody was allowed inside. He looked NASCAR officials in the eye while they signed off on things they did not fully understand. The verified record says he rewrote the rulebook 12 times. What are the odds he only did 12 things worth writing rules about? Bobby Allison said most of the stories are myth. What he did not say is that all of them are. There's a 0.3% somewhere in there that nobody has documented yet. A trick that worked so well it never got caught. A modification so subtle it never showed up in an inspection report. Smokey died in 2001. The shop burned down in 2011. Whatever was in that shop that nobody ever found, it's gone now. Drop it in the comments if you were in the paddock, if you worked on those cars, if you heard something from someone who knew. Because 99.7% myth means 0.3% is still out there somewhere. And that's a more interesting number than any basketball.